Tavern is open. It is time for Talking Pints. I'm joined by Mark Johnson, MBE. Mark, welcome to the programme. Now, I think it's important that we tell your story because it's happening to, I think, an increasing number of people. But you came from, I guess, what can only be described as a difficult, violent background. I guess we call it abuse.
Yeah,
these
definitely.
days.
Yeah.
But sadly, this is not uncommon.
No.
And you, I guess as many kids in those situations do, quite quickly started doing bad stuff.
Yep. It's pretty sort of logical, really, that you practice outside what you're learning inside. So I didn't really realise my behaviour was antisocial until I was in social environments like school, where I thought it was normal to, sort of project violence onto other kids and this sort of stuff. And then comes the school exclusion, the ostracised, the isolation, the criminalisation, actually. So,
does that go hand in hand with drink, drugs? Is it all part of the same thing?
Well, I think when in the home, my home, which is there's a lot of stories that are the same as mine, which I come into contact with daily. People when there is neglect, there is a human need to fill that void. So love, warmth, nurture, etc. And then when you spend your life mostly outside the home because it's safer, you come into contact with the people who are drinking, they're committing crime and that sort of stuff, and their friendships are more important than the getting arrested by the police. It's as simple as that. It's attachment, the attachment theory they call it. And it's so sort of prevalent now with gang activity and this sort of stuff, and I talk about this all the time, that it never gets looked at properly, because what we do is we criminalise behaviour rather than look at the true causes. And the true cause is actually the neuroscience now have got it about early childhood trauma on the brain. And actually what looks like a reaction doesn't need to be treated. It's an actual cause. We need to really look at this stuff.
Which is difficult to do on a mass scale, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Very, very difficult.
I'm a 52-year-old man. I've been clean and abstinent for 22 years in recovery, and I am still working out these, what I call blank pages in early childhood development, in sort of complex relationships and stuff. When I couldn't cope, I would be violent.
You'd be violent, and your descent into drugs led you to, well, you can't really get much worse, can you, than crack?
No, crack and heroin,
Heroin. And with that, I guess, the criminality to pay for it.
Yeah, it's so logical that it done for me what wasn't happening at home. So I was under school psychiatry at 8 years old, in trouble with the police. Somebody gave me this chemical, and literally it made me feel brilliant. Yeah. And so I chased after that. Yeah. And that was like the consequences of it paled into insignificant compared to the actual the anguish that I felt without it, and that took me to the streets. And
inevitably, it finished up with prison.
Yeah, prison. Inevitably it finished up on the streets of West End in London, sleeping in the shop doorway. Yeah. But along the way, it was prison sentences, drug rehabs, all sorts of people that did try to help but actually didn't reach me, whether I wasn't ready to be honest, which I think now I know, reflecting back, the prerequisite to change is self-honesty. And if I help people, it's to take them to that place of self-honesty.
You wrote a book about this that sold incredibly well. An autobiography brilliantly named Wasted. Yeah. I don't know, it's a great... I'm amazed nobody else had used it.
I know, yeah.
And we couldn't read enough, but it's a great title. Yeah. And you made the decision at some point, you faced up to this and said, right, I'm going to be dead soon. Yeah. I had Elizabeth Burton-Phillips on this programme a few months back, and, her son was in a similar position to you and died. Yeah. And she's done her best through charity to try and work with families that are trying to live with that terrible trauma. You didn't die. You decided you want to live. You turned it around. Yeah. What really interests me is, OK, you've gone through the rehab, you're clean, but it was how you then got into the productive world, the world of work. Yeah. How did you make that step? Because it's not easy for ex-offenders, is it?
No, it's definitely not. I was on the street, West End. I was 7.5 stone. I'm covered in body lice and scabs growing through the socks of my feet where I never took my shoes off. somebody that had used with me before got clean and become a social worker, and they were doing community action. And through that interaction of lived experience, I looked at him and I immediately trusted him because I knew he'd stepped in my shoes. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the point that really reached to me because I never trusted anybody. I never trusted the police, social services, because I always had a bad experience with them. But actually somebody with that lived experience, he won my trust immediately. Yeah. And he said, you can change if you want to. And I couldn't say, how do you know? Because I know that he'd changed.
He'd done it.
Yeah. So he led the way. I went into detox. I went into drug rehab. I'm very, very lucky. I mean, now, the 3 drug rehabs I went to, Westminster Council paid £20,000 for 1 year of drug treatment for me. All of those treatment centres are now closed through lack of funding. I come out the other end of it, and I love trees.
Yep.
And I basically started a tree surgery business. So the mind of an addict is very clever.
So you suddenly become an entrepreneur overnight.
I did, yeah, absolutely. Well, it wasn't that. It's you weigh up, like, what are your skills?
Yeah.
And I could hustle. And I knew about numbers and this sort of stuff. And also, drug addicts aren't lazy people. So you might look at the criminality and the vulgar behaviour and stuff, but actually, to be an addict, you work like 24/7 in finding drugs. And so what I'd done is I'd transferred those skills into an arboricultural company. Then within 4 years, I think I employed, from the street, in 4 years, I employed about 200 people like me.
Yeah.
I won loads of awards for it. And then I went on to work with the Prince of Wales.
And hey, you've got an MBE. I mean, you've gone from where you were to getting an MBE. Yeah. I love that. So the people you employed in that commercial company were people who'd been through similar.
Yeah.
And how many of them let you down?
A few, yeah, and still constantly do, but that's their journey. What I tried to do is focus on that one that actually responds to, like me. I mean, I've literally, in my charity now, I've employed like probably 500 people with criminal convictions and addiction.
So I was interested in this because, I mean, you've done it, you've got a commercial business, it's a success, and you say you can't win them all, but you are succeeding with some people, and hey, they're getting a few quid in their pocket too, aren't they?
And to watch that transition of like a young kid who wants the best pair of trainers who goes robbing them, to then seeing the value in earning his money and seeing the delayed gratification that comes with earning a wage. It's quite profound to witness. And then when you do witness it, you want to do more of it. I realise that everybody's not like me. I have an entrepreneurial brain. It's almost like a mental illness because it never stops. But through that, I've created so many opportunities. And what I say to people, especially because at 10 years old in this country, if you get a criminal conviction, you've got a life sentence there through the stigma that's associated with that. So I say to people, the best way to circumnavigate is to become self-employed because there's no DBS check. There's no DBS check.
So, because otherwise it is a hell of a barrier.
Absolutely,
isn't it? In every way. And you must have made a few quid out of this too.
Yeah, I did, yeah. Yeah, I did, yeah.
No, good. No. One of the things we love on this segment, Talking Pints, we want people who've been through tough times and been successful.
Yeah.
So you then decided to turn that into a charity, Use a Voice. Just tell us more about that.
So I won loads of awards. The Prince of Wales asked me to go and work there at the Prince's Trust, designed a mentoring project, which again was very successful. And the kind of point to it is I only want to work with people with lived experience of the justice system or early childhood trauma and all of the social injustices issue, because I see something really unique that they can offer our society that actually is often omitted, whether it's through charities, etc. They consciously exclude people like me, but yet claim to work with people like me. And actually, what I wanted to do is disrupt that. And so I've done the mentoring project with the Prince's Trust, could see that the Prince's Trust need to operate on their own parameters, and I started the charity. Rod Aldridge from Capita, the founder of Capita, he incubated me, and I spent a couple of years driving him mad in his offices. And then Use a Voice was born, and it says on its line is only offenders can stop reoffending. And it's directly faced the prison system, probation services, and all of the sort of, I'll call it the industry that's involved in vulnerable people. So now, I mean, last week we're working on a report for the it's actually the police inspectorate about serious youth violence, because they realise that when they go to do interviews and talk to people, they don't want to talk to them because of the barrier of mistrust. When you were doing the most comprehensive study on prisoner experiences during COVID, and the public just don't know about it.
I mean, from what I heard with this, Mark, that there were a lot of prisoners who effectively were in cells for like 23 hours a day.
23 and 3/4 hours a day.
Really?
So the Mandela ruling from the UN was 22 hours with purposeful activity, like work or that sort of stuff. And some people think, I don't care about people locked in prison because I couldn't go to the doctors or I couldn't go. But the restrictions that people had, the mental health crisis, which is absolutely, that's the real epidemic now in British prisons, that all the sort of, let's call it the supply chain of services that work in prison and probation all got paid. So the public have paid the same amount, yet people have been locked in their cell 11 3/4 hours a day with what they call distraction packs, which are colouring books being passed underneath the doors. People who say...
So it's almost like solitary.
It's completely solitary. And the thing about it is...
it's known that, when people were put in solitary...
The impact of it.
Captured airmen in France or whatever were put in solitary and then interrogated after 3 weeks, and they weren't the same human beings.
No. Let's look at it internationally. The Philippines released the size of the British prison population in the first month of COVID hitting the Philippines. Around 30% of their prison population got released because they know, even Wuhan released their prisoners because they know that prisons are the epicenter of pandemic, the transition of viruses and stuff. And yet we released 57 people.
But we have to have prisons, Mark Johnson, don't we?
We do. Absolutely.
And we have a problem at the moment that the prisons are full at 80,000.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of people who probably should be going to prison that aren't, given how full the prisons are. Or am I being a bit too Victorian about this?
Well, and this is the point of we need to take get more of an appetite to look at the detail, to say the public's being ripped off, from the court system. So we know that 70% of people in prison have some sort of neurodiverse condition, right? So mental health issue, that this early childhood trauma has impacted their behaviour. I'm not going to sort of say I'm going to pander to their need with that. I'm just saying we know this as a fact.
Yes, it's not offering an excuse, it's offering an explanation.
Exactly. We also know that if you've got a parent in prison, you're 50% likely to go to prison yourself. We also know that something like 90% of people that we put in the care industry, which I've got to say, because it's quite topical in my mind, that when you talk about care, it's not this care that these children experience is not in the Oxford Dictionary under the definition of care. Mm-hmm. Okay, we know that there's this route through into the criminal justice system, and political class after political class doesn't address it. And they say tough on crime, and actually it's lazy. It's lazy on crime. We're not learning from it. I mean, some of the sound bites that we've heard recently from the Justice Minister and stuff, will let you out your cell to have a game of pool if you stop taking drugs. They've diminished the addiction, which everybody in the public now have been touched by addiction, whether it's alcoholism or drug addiction.
It's everywhere, isn't it?
And they're diminishing it down to that it's this moral choice to do it. The alcohol bracelets and stuff, they're criminalising mental illness, neurodiverse conditions. If you've got 1 in 6 people have a neurodiverse like Asperger's, autism, etc., we criminalise it. The first point of contact that you have is the police. Then you go to the courts who aren't trained, especially the magistrates, aren't trained into mental health, not even in law actually. And they're on about increasing the sentencing capacity of a magistrate. They're not trained in law. They're all summary convictions. So you've got a mental health. You meet the police who judge you for your behaviour. Yeah. They don't assess you, never mind you refer you on to a professional. You go to court, that is a summary conviction on you knowing the difference between right and wrong without any insight into your condition. In the prison.
Very difficult.
You're put into prison.
But it's very difficult, this, isn't it? Because the public demand it. And the public want to be, and the public feel they're being kept safe.
At the very least,
what you're saying is we're not dealing with any of the causes.
But at the very least, you could deal with it in prison if you had the right regime and the right environment in prison.
And we're not doing that.
We're not. No, and we're paying for it. That's the key. And nobody's holding this government, especially, but also the prison and the probation service to account. Nobody's accountable.
Mike Johnson, keep doing what you do. It's terrific. You've helped thousands of people through your charity, and that's a fantastic thing to have done. And I think maybe what you need to do next is to get a little bit more into the public sphere and start holding people to account and offering better, positive alternatives. But I mean, I think, the way you've turned your life around, it really is admirable. I raise my glass to you. Well done. And thank you for joining me on Talking Pints.
Thank you.